Today's panelists include a group of us at Abt Associates who work on the LSA or have been a part of the AHAR process in the past. I am Corinne Bishop, and I'm joined by my colleagues Julia Brown, Tanya D'Souza, and Tom Baker. We also have a representative with us today from HUD, Fran Ledger. Fran, would you like to say a little welcome?
Sure. I just wanted to thank everyone for being on the webinar today. I'm excited about the LSA and the possibilities it offers for COCs and for HUD. I know that change is not always easy, but I'm hoping that you'll hang in with us through this process. I strongly believe the benefits of this effort outweigh the challenges that you may be experiencing right now. So again, thank you for joining us. Ask questions. This is time that's made available for you to be able to do that.
Great, thanks, Fran. So we'll start by covering some of the logistics for today. We have over 300 participants registered for today's call, so phone lines are muted to reduce background noise. We ask that if you have questions, comments, or technical difficulties, please use the Q&A function to submit your question and use the All Panelists option to have your question triaged to the correct staff member. Please refrain from using the chat function or sending questions directly to the host, as these may not be seen by our team in a timely manner. Finally, this session will last about an hour. So here's a screenshot of the WebEx platform. We've circled some of the functions that we just covered. If the Q&A box does not show up in your right-hand panel, you can add it by clicking on the blue icon in the top right corner of the screen. Before sending your question, make sure that All Panelists is selected from the drop-down menu, which is circled toward the bottom of this screenshot. We will be creating a resource to share after the event that will highlight the Q&As covered during this presentation, as well as the first office hour session. We will also be posting the presentation slides and, as I mentioned, a recording of this presentation. If your question is not answered today, please wait to see if it is covered in the resource, as we will be looking through all questions that come in, even if we're unable to get to them with our time today. If you still don't see your answer in the resource, please do submit a question to the HUD Exchange Ask a Question desk and select the HDX option when doing so to direct it to the correct staff. Okay, so with that overview, we will now be moving into a few brief updates related to the current LSA submission process. We've received several AAQs related to being locked out of the HDX 2.0 due to inactivity, so we wanted to address that today. Accounts are typically locked due to inactivity after 90 days of a user not logging into the system. To resolve this, you can submit an AAQ, and we will unlock it for you. However, we understand that for many of you, we have unlocked your account, but by the time you've gotten the chance to log back in, the account is locked again. We do apologize for that inconvenience, as I'm sure it's been frustrating for many of you to have to reopen your AAQs. The site's development team is currently working on a fix for this, so it will not continue to be an issue, hopefully. That fix should be pushed through the system soon, but until then, we do recommend that you log into your account as soon as possible after you receive a response to your AAQ. Your most recent password should still work, but we'll also send along some reset information in case you need it. The next slide is about some system processing errors that some of you may have experienced. I'm going to pass this one off over to Julia to address.
Thanks, Corinne, and thanks so much for joining us today. Just to echo Fran and Corinne's welcome. So yeah, we've been getting a lot of AAQs from folks who have gotten past the login stage, have managed to upload, sort of navigate to the upload process, And then after clicking upload, the file processes and displays, says that it was rejected, displays an error report that instead of providing you with specific information about what the error is, it simply says system processing error. And so what that means is essentially that it's an error that we didn't know we were going to get. The system didn't know it was going to get that, so there's no kind of output pre-programmed in to say, this is the cause of the problem. It seems like, generally speaking, what we're seeing is that the HDX 2.0 doesn't like special characters, like apostrophes, commas, things like that. So please, you know, talk to your vendor, check in with them, see if they're having a recurring issue with this with other CoCs, and we can work with them to pinpoint what the issue is and if there's some programming tweak they can make to kind of modify the output on a global level to make sure that it doesn't include those special characters if that is in fact the problem. You can also help us figure out what these issues are by submitting an AAQ and letting us know the information that's shown up on the screen. We can find it on the back end and dig into the logs and see potentially what was causing the error. We might outreach directly to you as well to ask for the upload. This is one of those things where, you know, the test kit, the test upload file can only take us so far. Once, you know, the test data just didn't have any of those special characters in it. And so now that we are using real data found in the wild, there's all kinds of things that the HDX just turns out doesn't like. So we're working on both sides of that issue. One is kind of trying to talk to vendors who are having this issue to see if there are some global fixes they can apply to their customers' output. We're also working on the HDX side to make sure that we allow for those special characters as much as possible. We're still getting, you know, new information. Even, you know, today we got a new one about a comma that the HDX doesn't seem to like. There was an apostrophe last night. So we just, you know, keep trying. If you've gotten that far, that means you've already kind of met the deadline that we put out there of November 9th to be able to log in and attempt an upload. If you've gotten that particular error message, then you have already logged in and you've already attempted an upload. So you're in good shape for that, and it gives us a lot of information to make sure that HDX can accept as much valid data as possible. These are these kinds of first-year issues that, you know, once we figure out all the special characters that we need to tell HDX to accept, we won't see these issues on an ongoing basis in the future.
Great, thanks, Julia. And I believe this next slide was yours as well.
Yeah, this was another set of AAQs that came in, just kind of some general confusion or problems with the file name and the upload name fields. So one thing I'll say is that your zip file can be named whatever you want it to be. There are no restrictions in the HDX on what it can be named. So a lot of your, I would assume a lot of your HMIS products export a zip file that has a standard name, and you can either change it or you can keep it. You can upload a file name that is the same as every other file name you've ever uploaded, or you can modify them if you want to. Once you browse to find the file and choose the file name, you also have to enter an upload name. Now, this upload name is something that you get to type in that will help you know which one it is. Like, you could enter today's date. You could enter your own name as part of the file, the upload name if you want to. You could type in some information about, you know, your CoC, or if you're doing a local use only and maybe you're running this quarterly, you could indicate that in the name. That's the field where you get to enter information and a meaningful name. So that's what's going to display on the HDX 2.0 screen. Couple things so you have to enter for that one a unique name. So if you've already used a name, you can't use it again. So you might want to think about kind of what a stable naming convention might be for your COC that will be useful in years to come in local use versus official use. So you might just want to think about that. One thing we've noticed here too is that it doesn't seem to like commas, so that will give you an error. Commas seem to be problematic, so try to avoid those. It seems like dashes and periods are fine in this field. Again, we'll work on patching that, but in the meantime, you can just make sure to kind of keep the name simple in terms of the characters you are using. I think the only other thing about that is that you want to make sure that it's unique. That's really the main issue that folks are reporting. I think that's it, Corinne, for me.
Great, thanks, Julia. All right, so we've also received a few AAQs asking us to clarify what must be done by the November 9th test upload deadline. So I wanted to go over that. The primary purpose of the November 9th deadline is to make sure communities have logged into the HDX 2.0 and tested the system to see if there may be anything they need to work with their vendor to resolve prior to the November 30th official submission deadline. So a test upload can be a local use only or official HUD submission file, and it does not have to be submitted to the LSA review team. In fact, you should not submit it to the LSA team for review until you are fully satisfied with the upload and have resolved any warnings flagged by the HDX 2.0 system, either by uploading a new file or leaving notes to explain those warnings. So basically, by November 9th, you just need to show that you have attempted an upload in the HDX 2.0. It is also okay if the status of that test upload is rejected by November 9th. However, in that case, you will want to begin working with your vendor after receiving that status in order to resolve any errors that are preventing your upload from being accepted by that November 30th deadline. So also as a reminder, on this slide, you'll see the anticipated LSA timeline for 2018. The HDX 2.0 opened on October 31st for official LSA submissions, and by November 9th, you'll want to show that you've logged into the HDX 2.0 and completed a test upload as explained in the previous slide. November 30th is the official LSA submission deadline. So by that deadline, a COC must click the submit button to be considered participating in the LSA submission process. That button will be active once any warnings have been addressed in the system and the upload has been marked as an official HUD submission. The LSA upload is extracted directly from each COC's HMIS. Therefore, any errors identified through the upload process will need to be corrected in the HMIS, and a new corrected LSA file will need to be uploaded to the HDX 2.0. Therefore, COCs should expect to upload and review several LSA files in the HDX 2.0, replacing old files with new uploads until they have resolved any warnings and confirm that the summary data are accurately reflect your numbers, characteristics, and system use. Once that official submission deadline passes, our team will begin assessing the data for any additional data quality issues. Once that process is complete, likely around late December, COCs will be assigned a data liaison to address any final issues before the final deadline in late January. At that point, COCs uploads will be marked complete, and COCs will have 3 business days to then go back into the HDX 2.0 and confirm the data. We expect usability to be determined around late February. I also wanted to mention, in case you missed it, that we just released a new resource on October 31st. This resource can be found on the HUD Exchange on the LSA resources page, which is also linked to from the HDX 2.0 homepage. This resource is a comprehensive guidebook for learning about the LSA and submitting your data via the HDX 2.0. We strongly encourage that everyone reviews it, and also while reviewing it, if you have ideas for ways that we can make it more useful to you, please feel free to submit those comments through the AAQ, as we'll likely be updating this manual in the future and want to make sure that it's useful for everyone. Okay, so now we're going to start with some of the frequently asked questions that we've received over the AAQ, and then we'll open it up to begin responding to some of your questions submitted through the Q&A function so far. The first question we have is which projects and project types have to participate in the LSA? So the LSA is the replacement for the AHAR submitted annually by a COC. Like the AHAR or the System Performance Report, only the HMIS lead or the COC lead agency is responsible for submitting the LSA report. HUD doesn't expect any individual project to run or upload an LSA report. The LSA report programming specifications define exactly what projects should be included in the LSA when the HMIS lead runs it for the entire COC. So all emergency shelter, safe haven, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing should be included, and that's regardless of funding source. Only projects that are affiliated with the COC in the Data Element 2.3 Continuum of Care code are marked as continuum projects in Data Element 2.4 project types will be included in a COC's LSA export, which is per the programming specifications. The next question we have is, what is the period of time that's covered by the LSA? So detailed client demographics and system use information will be included for any client active during the reporting period. For FY18, that's October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2018. And any client who exited during the 2 years prior to that reporting period. So again, for fiscal year 18, that's going to be anything back to October 1st, 2015. For all of these clients, system use history looking back further than that may be used to determine their chronic homelessness status. It is not necessary, however, to specify all of this when requesting your report from your HMIS. You should be able to simply select the reporting period. So again, that October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2018 for FY18, and the appropriate clients will be included. Project descriptor data element information for any project active during the reporting period will also be included in the LSA report. Using this information, the HDX 2.0 automatically calculates the inventory results for 4 points in time, which are January 31st, April 30th, July 31st, and October 31st. And that's for average per night and an adjusted average per night. The next question we have is, do we include SSDF projects for other COCs in our HMIS? So in situations where SSDF grantees serve clients in multiple COCs, the VA requires that grantees either directly enter their client data into each HMIS system, provide data exports of other COCs' HMIS clients to those HMIS implementations, or use another VA SSDF regional coordinator approved participation method. You can find guidance and considerations for SSDF grantees serving multiple COCs in the VA's data guide for FY18. And HUD encourages a dialogue among all parties to arrive at a satisfactory solution and encourages SSDF grantees, COC leads, and HMIS leads to reach out to the jurisdiction's VA regional coordinator for assistance. The VA data guide offers several suggestions for SSDF grantees, COC leads, and HMIS leads for working together and deciding how to move forward to meet VA reporting requirements and local data collection strategies. For purposes of the LSA, HUD expects that provisions were put in place during the arrangement of client data entry to identify the COC being served within a given HMIS implementation. So perhaps by creating a separate project. Using 2.3 COC code at the project level or 3.16 client location at the client level, that could be used to import and export client data from one COC to provide a report on it in another, as needed by the COC or on a frequency agreed on by all of the parties. Next question is a pretty quick one here. Do I need to set up project records for street outreach or SSO, homelessness prevention, coordinated entry, or other permanent housing projects that do not use HMIS? The answer here is no. None of those project types are included in the LSA. Next question is, the specs say that clients exiting from street outreach projects in the past 3 years are included in the returns measure. What are the data elements that will be required for those clients? And so as it says on the slide here, the LSA upload excludes all data associated with street outreach projects except for exit dates and destinations and exit cohort periods. So meaning from 2 years prior to the report start date to 6 months after the report start date. All right, and the next question, are the number of available beds and units expected to be pulled from HMIS with the LSA, or will it be pulled from the HIC as it was in the past? And how does the LSA know which projects in HMIS are correlating with a single HIC program if there are multiple projects for a single program? So the inventory data for the LSA will be generated from the 5 inventory-related CSV files that are included in the LSA zip file. The HIC data that was submitted in January will likely be reviewed and compared to those data by our data liaisons, but they will not be directly imported or used in the LSA calculations that are displayed on screen in the HDX 2.0. As far as project setup in your HMIS, you should set up projects according to the HMIS data standards requirements and consistent with the specifics of your HMIS software product. In some cases, HMIS products allow COCs to set up projects that have multiple funding sources, while in others, each project must have a separate funding source. Both are fine. We encourage you to review the project descriptor data element section of the HMIS data standards manual and our new video, which is linked in this slide, project descriptor data elements, building projects the correct way for LSA, HIC, and PIT to ensure that you're setting your projects up correctly. All right, the next question is, I appear to have access to a COC in my account settings, but it doesn't appear in the drop-down list of COCs when I go to upload a file for the LSA. Why not? So there are 2 things that might be going on here. First, you'll want to confirm that you have write access to the COC. If you don't, you will need to request that from your COC primary contact to change your access to write level. If you only have read, you won't be able to submit. If you do have write access for a COC and it is still not showing up on your drop-down menu on the Upload New LSA page, you're likely trying to upload an official HUD submission file for a COC that already has one. So you'll need to select local use only on the drop-down menu, and then you should be able to proceed with the upload. You can also go back and switch your official HUD submission to a local use submission if you want to do it that way as well. Next question is, where do I download and export the LSA files from HMIS in order to upload them to the HDX 2.0? All vendors are different, but most vendors are providing push button reports. When your vendor alerts you that this is available, you should be able to see it in your usual reporting interface When you run the report, you'll get a zip file with 10 CSV files in it. You don't need to open that file or change anything, just upload it as it is to the HDX 2.0, and you'll see the results on the screen. And the next question is, who can see local use only files, and what about official HUD submission files? So any file uploaded for a particular COC can be seen by anyone with read access or higher to that COC, as well as the HUD TA team that administers the HDX 2.0, and we use that for troubleshooting purposes. Official HUD submission files that are in the system with a status of submitted or higher can be seen by the Abt and UPenn data liaisons and data analysis teams. Next question is, what is the difference between errors and warnings? So errors prevent you from uploading the file at all. The HDX 2.0 is looking for specific values that are determined as allowable by the programming specifications. All the HDX system is looking for is that the value in any given column in your upload file is an allowable value. If not, you will be able to see the source of the error in the error report and work with your vendor to pinpoint the issue. Warnings are flags that represent potential issues with the upload file or HMIS data quality. They're not necessarily a problem, but can help you and the data analysis team understand your data. The warnings for FY18 are provided in Appendix A of the user guide I mentioned earlier that we announced on October 31st. And detailed instructions on how to resolve warnings can also be found in that guide in section 4.3. You should also note that you cannot click submit until you address each warning triggered by your data set in the HDX 2.0. And with that, I think we're going to open it up now for any questions that have come in through the Q&A box. So, Julia, I'm not sure if you have one that you'd like to start us off on.
Sure. I have quite a few and more coming in. So let's see where I can begin. One thing folks have asked about is they have been able to upload, they're seeing warnings in their LSA, some of which have that say pending and have a hyperlink to a specific warning, some of which read not reporting and there's no hyperlink. The ones that I've seen in this situation are like the warning is not being thrown accurately. So, for example, I saw one just last night where the user uploaded the file, and then there were 10 or so warnings that said the data quality result, I can't remember what, the missing data rate. The missing data rate for some particular field was very high. But when I looked at their actual data quality results further down the page, it was only 1% for that particular field. So there's something going on. It's a bug in HDX where they are showing as warnings, but I think, so we'll work on the bug. First of all, we'll add that into our queue. From what I can see, you can disregard not reporting warnings. You can also cross-check that by seeing like what the warning is about and going to see if your missing data rate for that particular value is particularly high. If it's not, then you know it's in error. We will also work on correcting that bug. I'll also just add, and this is pretty universal for a lot of these things we're going to talk to you guys about. This is why we're asking you to upload early and help us get this process started. Like, these are the kind of bugs that with test data we can't always see. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate you guys telling us about it. Okay, should the LSA count night-by-night shelters that don't have an entry exit? Okay, so for night-by-night shelters, which are not entry-exit shelters, although they do have project start dates and project exit dates. But for night-by-night shelters, yes, the clients that are in night-by-night shelters are included in the LSA. There are detailed instructions for vendors on how to include those clients in the programming specifications, and those projects should also be included in the inventory, the 5 inventory-related CSV files that are included in the zip file that gets uploaded. Again, if you, like I've said on a couple of these webinars, if you choose the report period that is the federal fiscal year and you choose to run it for the full COC, these decisions are baked into the programming specifications, so you shouldn't necessarily have to make those decisions about what to include or exclude. Okay, so how should, this is a common question we get, how should we be entering rapid rehousing information into HMIS, so the inventory information for rapid rehousing. So rapid rehousing is really tricky. What I will say is a lot of people, went and put an inventory number in the rapid rehousing, in their rapid rehousing projects. They put an inventory number in on the date of the PIT. But my feeling about this is that if you, unless your project has significantly increased or decreased funding since then, that's probably a fine number. The LSA will pull, in those client files, we will receive information about how many people were being served in that rapid rehousing project on the 4 points in time that we look at for the LSA, as well as a total annual number. So we will have a good sense of whether that particular PIT, that HIC number is meaningful, is like a good representation of availability based on the client side information. So I'm fine, if, unless there's something that has changed fundamentally about the project, like it increased or decreased funding, or it shut down, or it opened since your HIC, you can just leave that number as is. As long as you have an open date, it will, we will know then, as long as you don't have an end date. In other words, the inventory remains open from whatever date you last updated it to today, we will know then that that will be the number we should sort of assign to that rapid rehousing project for inventory purposes on those 4 dates in time. Now, if you, if you are reporting client data, because that particular rapid rehousing project does participate in HMIS, as I said, we'll have the client level data, and we can assess it. If it's not participating in HMIS, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to have better information than that number. If you do, you are more than encouraged to create inventory records with new and updated information on a regular basis. I just find it unlikely that people are getting that kind of information about projects that aren't participating in HMIS. And if they are participating, we have the client data. Okay, a couple folks have written in to say that their vendors have still not made the LSA report available in their system, so that they cannot run the report, as far as I can interpret these questions. If that is the case, if your vendor does not have an LSA in your system, whether, if you have questions about it, if you have concerns about the results you're seeing, that's one problem. But if you literally do not have an LSA report in your HMIS that you can run, please submit an AAQ and let us know who your vendor is, and what date they've indicated to you that you will be able to access the LSA. Also, one person wrote in to say I had misspoken and probably mistyped on the screen. I think I called it a system processing error that folks are getting the error message about when they attempt to upload, and the error report displays generic information. It actually reads server processing error. In any case, it's just that one thing. Those are not two different things or two different concepts. There's just that one issue that folks are facing, and it is called a server processing error. My apologies. Okay. I'm going to shift over to some questions about how, when people are able to successfully upload and sort of setting aside the warnings, people are looking at their summary data on the screen and having some issues. So here's a question. We're seeing some odd summary data where the HDX 2.0 is showing over 200,000 clients served for a tiny COC where they only serve 374 clients annually. Looking at the CSV files, it doesn't seem to be a problem with the files. It seems to be a display problem, like a translation problem between the files and the HDX display. So this is great. As much testing as we've done, obviously there's some kind of calculation error in this case, which means that there is a calculation error that is much broader than this case, most likely. So what we would love, if you're seeing those kinds of discrepancies, and we've already gotten a few, for you to go ahead and submit an AAQ and tell us what you're seeing. We'll reach out to you and probably ask you for the file so we can do some testing on our end, and we can work on pushing out corrections to the calculations within the HDX. As I said on a couple of these calls, there are 50,000 calculations, so we know there are errors in them. We are sort of crowdsourcing from you guys to help us point to where we can really find those errors and fix them. Once we fix them for one person, anyone who uploads after that point will benefit from those corrections. We'll also let folks know on a regular basis if we do, when we do correct calculations, so that everyone is aware that there was a problem and that they should go look at the new results. We'll push those emails out through the system when they happen, and we'll probably do like a weekly digest or something through the more formal HUD Exchange email listservs. Okay, I ran our LSA for a single project rather than the whole system, and I was able to upload it to the HDX 2.0. Even though it wasn't system-wide, does this count as having attempted an upload? So first of all, very cool. Like we don't encourage looking at, just project by project, but, it's very cool that you can choose subsets of projects. As we've talked about before, you can choose geography. Like if you have two big chunks of like urban areas in your COC, you can run just choose the projects from one area and then run it again for the projects in another area, and you can compare and contrast. All those things are very cool. We encourage you right now, though, to focus on the system-wide, the whole one, since that's the official upload to HUD. So yes, it counts in the sense that we now feel confident that this particular COC staff member knows how to use the system, that their HMIS is functional, so it's fine. That does certainly check the box as having attempted an upload. I would encourage you, though, if you are able to run at least one full COC LSA and attempt to upload that, because you're going to see different kinds of warnings. You might see even errors in your upload that you wouldn't see with just one report. So just for your own peace of mind, try doing the official full COC as soon as possible. Okay, so some questions about data fields that were not active a long time ago. So fields that are new, that maybe a client who entered multiple years ago would not have populated. All of those fields should have been handled at the time of the update. There were instructions for translating from old data or from non-existent data to existing data. So those should all be handled in your system or are accommodated in the programming specifications. Do OPH projects need to be reported in the LSA? So OPH is kind of, it's other permanent housing, but it's kind of a catch-all term for the permanent housing project types that are not PSH or RRH. No, only PSH and RRH permanent housing projects are included in the LSA. Have the HMIS software vendors been asked to take the client location into account to help ensure that only clients served in a COC are included in the report, or is it appropriate to include those served outside of the COC? So the project location, the project COC code is relevant to the report. If you have multiple COC codes within a single project, then you need to somehow be able to tag which client is being served in which COC. The data standards refer to that kind of term, that concept generically as the client level COC code. Yes, that is baked into the report. You can run an LSA for a single COC or a geography smaller than a single COC, and your project COC code, and if there are multiple, your client COC code need to match that particular COC. How will project descriptor information during the look-back period be used? So basically, what are we doing with project descriptor data from prior to October 1st, 2017? Nothing. You need to make sure your project descriptor data elements are clean and up to date for the reporting period of the LSA. So between October 1st, 2017, to September 30th, 2018. Focus your efforts and energy around project descriptor, bed, and unit inventory information on that 1 year period. Here's a follow-up question. You just said that other PH is not included, but it is in the export and does represent data from our HIC. Okay. So that's a valid point, thank you. So other PH, so it's hard to know exactly what people are talking about because there's 5 files that are about clients and there are 5 files that are about inventory. When we look at information about the clients who are being served in HMIS participating projects, clients who are served in other permanent housing project types are not included in the LSA. The project descriptor data element files, those 5 files, are kind of looser than that. So essentially, the programming specifications clarify that we're really going to be looking at only those project types, but if a vendor, for example, didn't want to do any extra programming other than what is already required to be programmed for the CSV exports of project descriptor data elements anyway, like those are 5 pre-existing files, they can just they can, they just export everything essentially. When we upload it into the HDX, we just disregard any data from any other project types. So it's fine that it's in your file, we just basically ignore it. What about shelters that are only open when the temperature is at a certain number of degrees? Yes, so seasonal shelter beds, winter shelter beds, those are certainly something that are accommodated in the project descriptor data elements. There's an inventory start date and an inventory end date field. So for each year, you would open the inventory record and indicate that the start date is the date that it started serving clients, indicate the end date is when it stopped serving clients. And then when we look at your inventory and we want to know on July 30th, how many emergency shelter beds were active, we will look at the date July 30th and see, oh, this inventory record was already closed by July 30th. So that is not, those beds are not available on that date. But when we look on January 30th, that does fall within the dates that that particular project was open, and we will include it in the available beds. I would strongly encourage the person who asked that question or who found any of that information that I just said confusing to watch the pre-recorded webinar on the LSA resources page about recording inventory dates. I can't retrieve the LSA from HMIS due to geocodes. A couple of questions have come in around geocodes. I'm not quite sure I understand the question, what due to geocodes means. So I would encourage you to start with your vendor and ask exactly what it is that is preventing you from being able to export the LSA, and if there's something your vendor can do to help you understand where to fix it. And then open an AAQ, and we can reach out to you and try to get more information from you. And we can, what we'll probably do is ask for the file that you're trying to upload, and we can look at it and see what it is that's happening. This is the same advice about another question, which is what does it mean when you get a geography geocode is missing? I check all my projects and there's a geocode in the system. So again, I would go ahead and submit an AAQ on this one because I'm not sure if the problem is within your HMIS or it's within the HDX 2.0, just from the way the questions are phrased. So I think for geocode stuff, it would be useful to kind of get more tailored one-on-one. Will the LSA remain open after the official submission period for further data quality testing for local use only? Yes. The HDX 2.0 will remain open year-round, and you may use it as you wish to upload and store local use files for either smaller geographies or for shorter time periods if you want to do quarterly checks on how you're doing over the course of the year, or whatever else you want to do with it, it will remain open. Someone is trying to verify that there are no street outreach programs included because it seems like there were two different answers about this. Yes, so this is a little bit of a puzzler. So there is no project information included about street outreach projects. And there's no information about clients who used street outreach projects. Obviously, if they used another project type, then they might be included in the report. But clients who used street outreach projects are not included. nor is street outreach included in the system paths that we look at in the LSA, so like the combination of project types that people use. However, because of the way the system performance measures were built a long time ago, there is this one tiny thing about street outreach projects that are included, which is that people who exited a street outreach project to a permanent destination in a prior cohort, like an exit cohort, those people are looked at to see if they fell back into homelessness later. Now, falling back into homelessness only means touching those projects that we've already talked about, ES, SH, TH, RRH, or PSH. So if they exited a street outreach project and then fell back into a street outreach project, they would not appear as part of the returns cohort. But if they exited from a street outreach project and then went into an emergency shelter, then they would appear in the returns cohort. This is confusing, it's very nuanced, it's a little strange, and it's definitely one of those things where over the years we will probably refine how street outreach is reflected in the LSA, but that's how it is for now. Will the 2019 NOFA competition include any points related to any of this? Fran?
We don't know that at this point. We can't say. HUD is very aware that this is a process, and so we're looking to give people flexibility at this time so that they can have some success in uploading their information and being able to start using it. So at this point, I wouldn't be concerned about that, but I cannot say one way or another what ends up in the COC application or NOFA.
Thanks, Fran. Okay. Some of these questions aren't quite questions, or they seem to be continuations of half questions that I can't find the rest of. The interface is not quite as intuitive as you guys might believe. You're not all like grouped together. It's just whatever comes in, gets pushed to the bottom. So if none of the warnings we've received suggest that usability is impacted, are we good to go? That's a great question. If you know, you still need to open the warnings and mark a status and put a note in there to explain them. And at that point, you would be able to submit. How long does the export from HMIS usually take? It has said pending for almost an hour. Is that normal? So it kind of depends on which one you're exporting. If you are exporting your summary data, no. If you are exporting your bed data, no. If you are exporting your full analysis file, it might take that long. An hour seems like a long time. The system will email you when it's ready, though. And once you've done it once for a data set, you don't have to do it ever again for that data set. Are DV projects included in the LSA export? So again, there are 5 files that are about clients and 5 files that are about projects. So DV projects cannot enter client-level data into the HMIS, so there is no client-level data that comes out of the HMIS. So none of the clients that are reported in the LSA client files are going to be in DV projects. All projects, however, do need to be entered into the HMIS as projects, even if there are not clients participating in them. So the inventory information in those 5 project descriptor data element files should include all of the projects that would reasonably be included in the HIC. So, I mean, even if it wasn't included in your HIC in January, if it opened since then, but it meets the criteria for including in a HIC, if you forgot to put it in your HIC, you should have a project in HMIS for all of your projects that are in your continuum that are dedicated to serving people experiencing homelessness. A couple folks are describing situations where one of the summary tables they're seeing doesn't reflect what they know to be true in the data. For all of those situations, we really, really value the close look that you guys are taking at these data. I'm so glad you guys have gotten this far and are able to do that this early. I would love for you to submit an AAQ and we will reach out to you and figure it out because it's probably a calculation error in the HDX 2.0 and we want to fix that. So submit an AAQ and tell us what you're seeing in your data that's different from what you're seeing in the HDX 2.0, and we will figure out what the problem is, whether it's a calculation issue or we are not describing clearly enough it's calculating correctly, but we're not describing it clearly. Okay, I think probably, Corinne, there's only 1 minute left, so you probably need to do a little bit of wrap up. There are still questions coming in. Again, we encourage you to look at the often asked questions document that we'll put out after this call or continue to submit AAQs.
Great. Thanks for getting through those, Julia. And we do just have a few slides here to wrap up. Just a reminder that we do have support available to you through the AAQ, so if you still have a question that you don't see in that forthcoming resource, feel free to send it to the AAQ desk. Also make sure you're looking at that new user guide, which should answer a lot of the questions that we've been seeing. But otherwise, everything should go to the AAQ right now, and you'll be assigned a data liaison for additional support later in December when we get to that data cleaning piece. This slide is just a link to some of those different resources that we've released. Again, that new user guide is right there on the top. Make sure to review those. These are some more resources, all on the LSA page. So next steps is just make sure that you log into the system and attempt an upload by November 9th. Utilize the AAQ, and we will be posting this recording and related resources to the presentation soon, and we'll announce that over the HUD Exchange listserv once it becomes available. Here's just another overview of the timeline. And overall, thank you for joining us today and submitting your great questions and being so engaged in this process.